Hello, am I on? I think I'm on. Happy Friday. It is How-To Diorama. I am Bill. And today we're going to look at medieval chairs. That's what I've been doing this week. Working on my D&D diorama, which is back there in the corner. I'm trying to figure out what to put in it. And I've got these ideas of, different things. So I thought, I'm going to need a multitude of chairs. So I wanted to kind of dig in and do some different chairs. So that's what I did. So I made 3 different chairs, and I'm going to show you how to make one of them. This one. That's the one I'm going to show you how to make today. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I've got a video that I will play about, making the chair. And then if you've got questions or comments or anything, just, say something and I can interrupt that and we can talk about it. So why don't we dive in? And I'll have more to say as we're going through it. I'm not going to just like play a video and not be here. I'm going to be right there. So if you got any questions, just say so. And we'll just talk about it. So here we go. Well, today we're making chairs. I wanted to use a little different wood, and so I milled this up. This is sapele. Once it's finished, it's kind of a reddish wood. This is finished. It is sapele, and it has a really nice reddish brown tone to it, and I use it a lot. I'm going to be making chair seats and chair legs out of this, and so I can use the same thickness of material for both, just under an eighth. An eighth would work just fine. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a chair bottom, or the seat. That's how I start my chair. So I'll take my little 90-degree. I want to cut off the end because sometimes the ends get frayed and stuff like that. So if you're using a freshly milled piece of wood, a lot of times you want to cut off the end. Not just because there's some paint on there from the, the original grading of the wood, but what can happen is the wood can split. And in the drying process, you can have like little micro splits coming up from the end of the wood. And so if you don't get rid of those, that could be left in your final product. But cutting back a little bit, that's all you got to do. So I'm just going to make a mark there. And then I'm going to make a blank for a seat, and that's approximately square. Okay, so when I am working with this stuff, I cut it on this. Let's see if I can get it in the picture. So this is called a miter box, and it's for cutting, like a 45-degree angle. So I've got cuts in here at 45 both directions. So I don't have to flip the piece in case there's like something on here that makes it difficult to lay flat. And then I've got it just basically a cutoff. It's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And then I'll just slide this up and cut that off. I like to use a Japanese saw. It cuts really nice. It's got a very thin blade, which gives it a very thin kerf. It's a little different than Western saws because the cutting action is on the pull stroke instead of the push stroke. Most Western saws I used prior to this were that way. You cut on the push, kind of like the power stroke. But the way that the blade and these teeth are ground and stuff, oh, you can't even see a thing that I'm talking about. But the way that the teeth in here are ground and stuff, you don't have to be really aggressive to cut. And certainly this is very thin stuff. But basically I'm just going to place it on there and just let the weight of the saw do the cutting. And so I'm just moving it back and forth, keeping it vertical so I get a nice clean cut. And I'm not really pushing down at all. And it just does a great job. Now remember, that's just clean up the end. That's just the end of the wood. I'm going to go ahead and now cut my blanks. They don't have to be perfect because I'm going to do a lot of work to them. And I do want them relatively the same though. So I'm going to do that. Looks good. we go. So those are the 2 blanks that I'm going to make into chairs. So what I'm thinking about here is if that's pretty wide, but if that's the width of my chair, I basically want to come in and I'm going to cut a notch out there. I'm going to cut a notch out there. Those are going to be the 2 front legs of the chair. For the back and the back legs of the chair, I'm going to come in basically that distance, that same distance there, and that's where I'm going to start. That chair is right there. So the width of that, that's the start of that. And the same thing, I'm just going to come here and put that notch. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this so it's a little bit of a curve up to this, because the seat back isn't as wide as the seat front. So I'm just going to take from right there, I'm just going to draw a nice little line right there. Same thing over here. Just like that. And that is how I design my seat. All this black will be cut away and made nice and pretty, of course. But that's the basic shape. Do the same thing over here. So there you go. That's the basic shape of a seat. I'm just going from there to there at a 45. That's defining the 2 sides I'm going to cut in from. Okay? Now, if I cut in here like this, I have a chance of splitting this thing all the way down, because that's the direction of the grain. So what I want to do first is I want to set in here, just with a little cut, I want to set my stop line. I'm not pushing all the way through. I'm just setting a cut line to stop it from splitting down. Same thing over here. Okay. Now I can come up here and I can do the same thing, being careful. Now you see I'm coming all the way up to the top. Now I'm just whittling it away. A little bit each stroke. Then I can come back here and clean it up. Now, I'm going to do that again with this other side. It'll be opposite view, but hopefully it'll be a little bit better. So, I'm going. Okay. I just wanted to stop right there real quick because I actually want to go over that little corner with this kind of enlarged view of it so you can see what I'm talking about making these notches in the corner. So I'm going to go to the top down real quick and we're going to take a look at this because I think it really makes a big difference at how you approach this. So I'm gonna bring it in. Oh, that's as tight as it goes. Sorry. And so I want you to think of this is the same thing that I'm doing here with making this little notch. I've just got a lot bigger view of it. So when I come in here, the grain is going this direction. Okay, that's the grain of the wood. And I'm trying my darndest to keep it from splitting. You know, I don't want it to, if I should just come in here like this, and I explain that in the video a little bit more, if I come in here and just press through, it's just going to split. So what I do is, first off, I come across the end at a 45, like this, okay? Once I've got that, that's defining how far I'm going to go on either side. Then I'm going to come in with my chisel with the flat side against the place that I want to stop. So the bevel is there, and there I'm going to make a mark. I'm not going all the way through. I could on this piece, but here you don't want to go all the way through. And then I'm going to very carefully do the same thing here, not going all the way through. I'm just defining the edges that I'm going to be cutting toward. Now I'm going to take, again, with the flat side this way, I'm going to go all the way up to the top here, and I'm going to start whittling it back. Now, when I'm doing this in real time on these little tiny pieces, See how many cuts I'm making? I'm making that many cuts, but of course they're just teeny tiny cuts when I'm doing them on the real piece. So once I got that, now I'm going to come in and do the same kind of thing, but I'm going this direction. But I got to be really careful. In the video, and you're going to see how I do split it, and I will show you how to fix it, because it's really not a hard thing to do. It's just you don't want to do it in the first place, and this is how you can do it. So as I continue going in here, I'm just going to keep going back and forth, and as long as I have a relief cut down here, you know, going tangential from the grain, as long as I got that relief cut there, that is going to help me not split down these little pieces of wood. It's not as readily going to split this way because the grain's going there, so I'm okay coming up all the way to that line, and then here on my last one, boom, and I've got a really nice square notch. And so that's what I'm trying to show there, is this, when I say walking it back in the video, I mean I define this point, I define this point, and then I start walking it back and then do the same thing until I'm finally done. Okay? So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer those, because I think that's, I mean, you'll see in the video, I split one. It's not that big a deal, but if you're a person that's just learning it, it can be like oh gosh, darn it, I just split my wood. And, you know, and so I just want you to know there's an easy way to fix it. If you follow the steps, it's also easy to not split it, and you'll do fine. So let's go back to this here video. Going in here, I set that first because that's opposite the grain. You know, it's tangential to the grain. So I set that because the grain's going this way. Now I can come in here. I'm not pushing hard here. I'm just setting the edge of where I'm going to be cutting. Okay? Don't want to split. Then I come back here, and I'm going to start cutting here. See right at the end? Just cutting down, just like that. And I'm whittling it away, coming back to the end. Then I can come over here and do the same thing. And then back there to the end. So that way, I don't split my wood. I get a really super nice cut. See how clean that cut is there? That'll give me a super nice cut, and I want that. I don't want something rounded, you know, my cut line. I don't want something at an angle. I want it perpendicular, straight up and down, okay? Because what is going to go in there, whoops, what's going to go in there is a leg. I'm going to cut a leg, and a leg is going to notch right in there, and that has to keep it straight, okay? So now, this other thing, it's kind of the same deal, but I'm just going to whittle around this arc. I'm going to kind of, you know, take some of this off first. Remember, if it's a clean cut like this, then you're not going to go with the grain, because I'm, you know, each side's like that. The issue, the reason it wants a split is a chisel has a chisel edge. That has an angle, that is flat. So what happens is when it goes in the wood, this side here, because of that chiseled edge, it pushes the wood that way. And if you do that on there, you know, along this, that's what causes it to split. So that's what we're trying to prevent. So I can cut here and here and there. And because I'm terminating every little bit off the wood, no splitting. Let's do the same thing over here. They're not exactly the same. That's okay. We're going to use a sanding disc to kind of get that. Here is a sanding disc, or stick. This is 180. The reason I drew this so that the front leg is here, and then the back leg is going to basically end where the front leg is, because now I can put an arm on it if I want. So later on, I have a leg here and I got a leg there. I could have an arm coming here and then attaching to the side of the leg. Okay, that looks good. Next, we are going to cut those little notches out. And remember, here's my grain going this way. So I'm going to do my stop cut first. It's going to keep it from splitting on us. Just a little cut. Same thing on that side. Just a little cut. Then I come in here and I'm going to define that edge, not going deep. That's a real easy way to split it, going too deep on that one. A little bit. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to walk it back. Then I can come up here and go all the way. Oh, look it, I split it. That's okay, we can fix it. There we go. I'm going to continue doing this. And there we go. Yeah, see, that's the split that I keep talking about. I'm trying to prevent that. We can fix it, it's okay, but we don't want to do a lot. So let's do this one next, and I'll come back and fix the split. Now, let's fix this real quick. So, you don't want to get frustrated. I've done that before and like, and break stuff further. So you just hold on to it. It's totally fine. For this kind of a fix, I want to use a PVA glue. And PVA glues are for like a woodworking glue. It's a yellow wood glue. So I'm going to go grab, so this is Tight Bond wood glue. And there's Tight Bond 2, and there's all kinds of different variants, but I just like regular old Tight Bond wood glue. Elmer's is fine too. I used Elmer's wood glue for many, many, many years, but then I switched over to Tight Bond for no real reason other than availability. So, I didn't put a lot on there. I put just a little tiny bit, and that's still too much. But what I want to do is I want to come in here and get glue on the other side. See that? So I've got glue on both sides. Then I'm going to kind of get a little air in there. And I'm going back and forth. I'm not pressing real hard, but I'm just kind of getting it to seat in. Well, that back and forth motion, what that does is it gets rid of any air that might be in the joint, and it makes sure it's just the glue. The glue heats up just a little bit, and it just, at a certain point, bonds. I mean, it just literally bonds. It doesn't mean it's done. I could still take it apart. But that little bit of a bond is enough so that I can hold this here for like 30 seconds or so. And then I can let loose. Again, I'm not done with it. I'm not gonna, start working with it yet. I'm gonna set that to the side. Should sit at least an hour. You know what I mean? And then I can use it again. But I don't have to do anything else to it. I could put a clamp on it. I don't think it needs it. I'm just gonna let it sit. So at least an hour, and then you can't put any stresses on it. It's just that you could work with it. So now we're going to continue with this one. We're going to make some legs. I make legs just like this. This is a strip of the same material. Let's get this thing to refocus. Okay, so this is the sapele, another strip of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut legs square. So it's going to be the same width as that. Let me get it back here. That's better. Same width, but just this way. So I set this. This is my marking gauge. And this marking gauge has a round cutter wheel on it. And it's for like when you're doing woodworking, you just cut a little line in there and it marks it for you. Like if you're doing stuff on the end, you can go here and you can do that, and it marks the end. Let's see if it'll focus on there. There we go. See that line I just put on there? That's what this marking gauge is for. But with thin material like this, it works wonderfully for cutting material. And that's what I'm going to do. So I am going to set this to the same width as the thickness so I can get a square piece of stock here. And I only need one. And then I just go along here. Now what this is doing is I'm marking it, but it's also partially cutting it. And then I just come back with a scalpel to clean it up. There we go. So now that side, that was, the side that we didn't cut, that was the edge of the board initially. That's the top, that's the bottom. Well, that's the side we cut. This knife on here is got a little bevel on it, so that's not flat. So to make sure that that is nice and square, I'm going to use my little block plane. Just trying to figure out what kind of plane it is. And just very carefully plane that down till it's flat. Remember, there's a mark on there to tell me when it's square. So I don't want to go too far. I can make it too thin. But that will get about 3 strokes, it felt like, got me flat. There we go. So now that is a nice square piece that will go in to become a leg in the front and the back. Now, we're not going to use this for the back because the back is a little different. The back has to be angled. So I cut a wider strip here, cut it to length, and then I can, make this angled like I want. Okay, so that's front and back legs. The length is kind of up in the air. These are going to be big. I'm going to go about that big. What I'm doing here is I'm rolling and basically a score all the way around. And then I kind of just press in, get a little deeper on the second time around, and they come right off. There's, you've got a nice flat edge, and then there's a little tiny bit of a nib there. And you just hit that real quick with the sander and it's gone. This is just medium CA glue, gap filling CA glue. Now I talk about it a little bit later, but what I'm doing here is using that almost like a filler. Okay, so now I can take that. That looks good. Let's get the other one in there. Okay, let's get the back legs going. These back legs, I did them thicker because I've got to make them angled, right? They've got to be angled a bit. So I will take the front off of the top and then the back off the bottom. So the back, I just want to be at an angle like that, and then just keep the same thickness as the other leg, like that. So okay, so what I'm going to do is on the top down, where is my top down? I need to do that. And now I can get my top down. And I just want to show you this because this is exaggerated, but I think it's a fair example of what I'm trying to do with that little back leg. On the back leg of a chair, and this, again, it's exaggerated, but it's got to be angled back a little bit. And when it's that small, I think it's really hard to kind of just figure out, how am I going to get, well, this is how. So I go to the width that I want this to come back to, okay? And then I hit it at the halfway point, and that's where I start the angle of my chair. Now, that can vary. Some of the chairs, and I'll show that in a little bit, but some of the chairs you want shorter legs and a higher back. That's okay. You can just scoot this line, this center point down. You would never have it like this. In other words, really long legs, unless it's like a tall stool or something like that. So this is how we achieve that. I do that halfway point. There's the width of my leg. I keep the same width here. Then I will come back with this first one. There's a slight taper, and then I draw this last one. So there's a little bit of a slight taper at the top. Then I cut this away. Then I define these two edges. I start chipping those away. And when I'm ready to get this out, I want to take a relief cut here. And this is something that you'll see me do, but I don't really explain it well. But by making a relief cut like that, as I'm doing this carving, it helps it not split out. Even if you want, to cut along the grain, you don't necessarily just want it like, oh, I'll just hit here and let it split out, because the grain may not follow exactly your line. The grain may go this way, the grain may go that way. So you want to define that edge first and then cut this out. So let's go back to the video, and I think it'll become real, real easy to see, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, everybody got that? I hope so. That is what I'm going to cut away. And I'll go in here and mark my chair back. That I can just come in and cut it away. Same thing here. There's that relief cut I'm talking about that I don't mention in the video. So now I've got a nice little angle there. Got to clean it up a little. It's important to clean your edges because part of the cutting process is a fracturing process. So it is important to go ahead and sand. I wouldn't just try to rely on your cutting. Okay, so there are our chair front and back legs, and we'll just glue those in. Okay, so let's get the chair back. It's the same process, just kind of roll, score as you go around it, and then deepen the score, and it'll just pop right off. Now you'll notice when I put glue in here, I'll wipe it away with my fingers, and my fingers get pretty gluey during this process. It's just something I got used to doing. Some people don't like to touch glue because it doesn't come off. It comes off in a couple days, but that's just my process. Here's something about chair design. So when I'm doing the rungs for the legs, you don't want them lining up perfectly. So like if I had this side rung going from here to here, I wouldn't want the back going from there to there. The reason is, in a real chair, what happens is you bore into that leg, you make a place to fit in a tenon. And if you had that on the side to support this leg and on the back, it would weaken the chair at that point because you're cutting into this leg too much. So the other thing that we consider when doing a chair is in the front of the chair, you don't want any stretcher going across here too low because it would hit you in the back of the ankle. Right? It hit you like right in your Achilles if it were right here if you try to put your leg behind you. You want to have the rung on the front of the chair quite high, if not almost right underneath this, because you need to be able to stand up, you need to take your feet and get them behind your center of gravity when you stand up. So that means your feet need to kind of go here, not out here. So if I had a rung there, you couldn't do that in a chair. So I need a rung here, but it's going to be really high up. So if I can't have two rungs at the same place, number one, and number two, I have to have this one high up, then it only goes to make sense that these rungs I can have relatively low, maybe just below halfway. This one will be high up to balance out the one in the front, and then the front one will be high up. So that's how you figure out putting those on there. Now, if you want to get decorative and all that, you can do whatever you want. But in general, building a chair, that's what you want to consider. You've got to be able to get your legs underneath it. So a very high one, a very high one, a medium to low one, and a medium to low one. The side ones should match, and the front ones should match. They don't have to. It's just a point of symmetry that helps. And you do need the rung. The rung helps it with this, from racking. So that's why you want a rung between these legs. So we're going to do the back one first, then I'll do the sides and then the front. So I've already cut this one to go here up high in the back. Just like that. You see there, that's nice looking. It kind of lines up properly, in the back. Aesthetically, it has a good look to it. Having that rung back there. It does stick out a little bit further than that, but we got all kinds of shaping left. We're not done with the chair even after we get all this stuff in. We have a bunch of shaping to do. Okay, so now for the side, it's going to go just right below it. See, right there, right where that one starts, that's where that's going to go. These are going to have to cut at a little bit of an angle too. So when because they're kind of going like this, a square and a square, so they're going to be kind of I don't know what the hell that shape is, but I know how to make it. So what I did is I marked, and then I'm going to cut a little bit beyond the mark, a little bit proud of the mark right there. Give me room to, make those cuts when I'm trying to fit it in. Okay, so that's my length plus a little bit. Now, what I was talking about is, you see those legs? These are like square to each other, but something going like that is going to have an angle. So this, if it was going straight, that's fine, but I got to go to an angle. So I got to take a little bit off of each corner, and I can do it by sanding, or I can do it like this. And they both cuts go in the same direction, because they are parallel. the ankles. Okay, so just like that, little tiny bit, not a lot. And look at that. Just like that. Like I knew what I was doing. So now we'll get a little bit of, and right there. Now I'm really putting on a fair amount of glue. And the reason is it's almost being utilized as a filler in part. Any gaps that I just might have in my joinery, that super glue will fill. And in the next step, what I am going to do is we're going to take a file and we're going to smooth all this down and make it look like a really nice chair. But if I don't have all that glue in there, I could just, you know, basically knock it apart if I don't have enough glue in there. So we'll take care of the glue and stuff in this next step. I like marking right on the part. You know, one of the things I was going to say at the beginning of this, and I kind of just skipped it, was when I'm figuring out the size, I'm kind of thinking about proportion more than size, you know, scale. Because you've got different characters and different manufacturers. And, you know, if I'm doing this for 1/35 figures, I literally have the figure built, you know, in a sitting position, you know, that classically like a driver is, you know, the lower torso for a driver is perfect to put in a chair because they're sitting. But I take their torso and I put on the chair as I'm building it. And that helps me with all the scale, but the proportion means I want the seat to be this big in relation to the legs, and these legs to be spread out in relation to these. That's the thing that I really concentrate on more, because once you have the size based on the character you're building it for, then that's what's most important, is everything looks proper. Like this seat looks awfully big, but it'll look right when we're done. Okay, that's good. So that just needs to dry. Everything needs to cure up in that guy. Okay, so that is the video. And there's more to this, of course, because if I'm looking at, where's it at? I'm going to go over here. If I'm looking at, you see, that's the same chair that I built in the video. But this is the point where after it's dry, I will sand it. And you can kind of see at the front of the chair where you would have little lower spots on the leading edge of the chair and a little higher in the middle for your legs. That's a classic chair design. So that's what I do. I go back in, and the files that I use are the same ones that I'm pretty sure I showed you last week. They're just your regular modeling files. They're pretty darn fine. You don't need a lot of an aggressive file or something like that. These things are just as delicate, if frankly not more, than any plastic that you're trying to clean. And that's really what we're doing. So with all those sharp edges on this little chair, all I'm doing, let's probably go to the top down. All I'm doing is I want to round over those edges. Like before, I think I've said, I just don't want to do any or have any kind of sharp edge on here. So I'm just taking this and just like that, you know, I'm not getting in there. It's really delicate. I mean, it's pretty darn strong, but I don't want to mess anything up. As I said, I go at the leading edges of the chair right here and here. That's for your legs. It's a little bit higher in the middle. I will try to smooth out the legs. The back, I spend a fair amount of time making this a little bit cupped. You know, there's a bow in the back. You want it to look like a chair, and I think I've said this before. When I'm building something out of scratch, and it's something that is kind of fanciful, or it looks kind of like something, but it's not as recognizable as something, you've got a little bit more levity or leeway, not levity, leeway to not do it perfect. When you're doing a chair, we've all seen a chair. It's a little maybe more important to try to have it look good. The point about the rung in the front, when you get up out of a chair, just think about it. You slide your legs back to get them under your center of gravity, and then you push up to get up. If your legs were out in front of you, you couldn't get up. Somebody would have to help you. So those are the kind of practical things that we want to do when we're doing something super recognizable. Now, this is a very, very basic chair. I've got other chairs that I made. So we're going to look at those real quick. If I would do that correctly, we would look at those real quick. The other chairs I made it's kind of a throne style chair, but it wasn't always thrones. This one has not been finished. I thought it was a little too thin, so I'm just going to make it again. And the other thing that I noticed in a lot of the drawings and references that I have is there was a heck of a lot of carving. Now, I'm trying to balance this carving of the furniture that is real, surviving furniture from that era, 400-year-old furniture, So I'm trying to reconcile that, which was most likely kept around because it was an expensive piece, right? If it's that old, if it survived that long, it probably wasn't, like a regular person's chair. It was probably, somebody that had some money and could pass it down through the family. So I think it would be rare to see today what a regular chair would look like in medieval times. Now, this is just me thinking. Maybe there's just numerous examples out there, but I haven't located them. So the examples that I'm seeing have a lot of decoration on them, a lot of hand carving, and number one, it's difficult to do at the scale. And number two, I'm not so much a carver. And I don't know if I could carve it like that. I was thinking earlier this week of maybe using some leather punch tools. I don't have any. I used to when I was a kid. But leather punch tools might be a way to get some carved designs in it. One of the suggestions that I got from a viewer was, do a twist, this kind of a barley wheat or barley twist kind of a thing. That I can do, and I plan on doing one of those, but I'm not going to do it like I've seen, because I've seen chairs, medieval chairs, again, really decorated and stuff like that, with those barley twists as like the front legs that come down from arms and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm going to do that. It's really hard to do that little barley twist because it has to be done by hand. I'll use my lathe as a chuck, basically. I can't use the lathe really to turn it because it would go too fast. So I have to basically use it as a chuck or a holding piece so I can by hand make that. And I've done twists like that before, so it's not going to be difficult. It's just going to be, I don't want to make a bunch of them. So I'll do a table like with a center post of that barley twist. But the regular furniture I'm going to make is, I want it to have a feel of regular furniture, just what a person might have. The accounting office. I don't think the accounting office, which is upstairs of Barrett's Coffee House, is going to have a lot of high-end furniture. It would have just standard furniture. The frugality you think of an accounting office, they wouldn't have like really high expensive stuff. So I'm trying to come up with designs that follow the medieval designs that I'm seeing online. And I'm kind of stripping away some of the gilding, some of the things that people have added to those, the real ones, to make them look like period or because they were period. But again, my thought is those surviving pieces were from people that could pay a lot of money for those, and that's why they were kept around. So we'll see how that goes. But I did make a scissor chair. Now there's another much better name for it, and I don't know what the heck it is, or even how to say it. It's like a Solange something. I don't know. But this you probably have seen before, and just a like street name, I guess, is scissor chair. But the design is very classic, and it's made by having a bunch of the same kind of pieces, cut, and then I can put them together. Well, I made a jig to do that, and I don't have a video of that. It's a much longer process, and that other process is short. But this was a much longer process. But I did film it, and so I am going to show a video of it later. I'm producing a video on that one, and it starts out with making this little jig out of brass. So here, if there we go. What am I doing? I don't know why this is now all of a sudden doing this, but I just drew out what this individual piece would need to look like, and then I cut it out of brass. A lot of filing, a little bit of cutting, and a lot of filing. And then this is it's just the same image flipped and placed on each other. That's basically what the pieces of wood come out like after I've used my little brass jig on it. And it's just as simple as I will take. See, I didn't even prepare it because I knew I wasn't going to show you, but I'll just take some of the wood that I have, and on that I think I used sorry, I got like hair in my mouth. I think I used walnut. But I just took that and I cut a bunch of these to length, and then I taped them all together, and then I bored a hole. And that's why the hole is in the middle of this thing from the picture. You can see, sorry, that hole right there. Well, that was so I could put a pin, which is just a finish nail, right through that. And so that is just for indexing. Anybody that's been in manufacturing or building or something like that, you know what an indexing pin is. And basically what that does is if after these are built and I take them all apart, I can always go back and put them back together because I've got that one singular indexing pin. And I think that's important because after I cut all of the little pieces based on that shape, then I just had to reverse them, just like in the little picture there. Let's get back to that picture. I had to reverse them and then glued them together. And then there was still an awful lot of shaping that was necessary to get it to, the final bit. There's also points where I needed to take and make some additional pieces using the jig, which was nice because it made it very easy to do, to fill in some of those armrests and things like that. So that is, I think I just need to do that, and now it'll go side by side. There you go. That's what I wanted. But that's what I came up with. And then I put a back on it. There's the back. And then I put a seat in it. And there you go. You got a little scissor chair. The hole in the middle, I do want to put some kind of little decoration. One of the patterns that was very used back then was just a flower. And it was just rose petals. And I've carved it before, and I know what it's supposed to look like, but man, it's going to be pretty darn small, but I'm going to give it a shot. I think it'll look neat. So that is pretty much what I got this week. I do have this though, and I would really like to talk about my patrons because I got a bunch of new patrons, like a bunch. Look at that. I got new patrons this week, or this last couple weeks, actually, because I've been just real scattered. But thank you so much. And I got to tell you, all my patrons are really so cool because they have their own stories. They have their certain things that they are interested in. and want to talk about and want to work on. But the fun thing is because I have all these different interests, I mean, we can. Angela was talking about a post I did this week on Patreon, which was a 9 drawer cabinet that I built a number of years ago, and it was for like pencils and art things and brushes and pens and stuff like that. And she's like, "Man, I'd really like to build one of those." And I think her boyfriend is maybe thinking about one or wasn't sure. But that's the kind of thing. It's fun because I could like instruct you on how to do it. I've done this stuff and I built the jigs for him and I could walk you through it. And that's really what I wanted the patron to be. John's here. John just said, hold on here. John has a comment here. Are you doing anything different because you are using hardwood than if you build the same thing out of balsa? Hey, great question. And we need to go over that, John. But I just want to get back here real quick. Yay, more patrons. The thing about the patrons, I totally forgot where I was going, but it was a good question. So let's get back to that. Yeah. When I get to these smaller pieces of furniture, for me, balsa wood is a hindrance. It is so soft and so easy to break that I need to put a little bit more force on stuff. I need to have a little bit more structure to the wood. I can drop any of these from like waist high if I'm walking, back from the gaming table to a shelf or something like that, and it's not going to break. Balsa, yeah, maybe because it's so light, it would be okay too. But I feel a lot better about using hardwoods or woods with specific characteristics, and we'll talk about that real quick, because I think it's easier to work with and it's going to last a little bit better. So now, hardwoods and specific characteristics. There are hardwoods like oak that I wouldn't choose to do here because it's so the grain is so large. It's a very open pore wood, and so these big holes in the wood that are physically in oak, they're fine if you fill them, but on such a small piece of furniture, it would look like a big gash, like in the side of the arm of the chair. So that's what I mean by the properties of the wood. It really doesn't lend itself to it. Walnut is good. It's not the best. Walnut's good because it machines well. By machining, I mean if I put a machine to it, if I put a tool to it, and I cut something, it's going to have like a very sharp corner. It holds its corners. The wood doesn't want to split and fray and stuff as you're working with it. So that's why it's good. But certain pieces of walnut do have some larger pores in it, openings and stuff like that make it, not as good for that. A very good wood to use for this really tiny detail would be like poplar. Poplar is a great wood. Basswood is a great wood. It's a little bit softer, not as soft as balsa, but there's really no grain to work with. The problem is it also doesn't have any really nice looking grain in it, so that it doesn't look as nice. This is basswood. Yeah, workability, brilliant. And it has the strength to do the kind of woodworking that we're doing and making these small things. So it's fine if that's all you can get. It's just you're going to have to rely on your painting skills to make some really nice grain and to paint it properly. It's really not a bad option to go with. And for some folks, because of the thicknesses we're talking about, because I didn't have to cut this, it's that thick. I had to mill and machine my wood down to these thicknesses and these dimensions. If you don't have that stuff available, then you can buy some basswood that is the thickness that you want, and then you work from it there. So it is a really good thing for that. I don't do it because I do have the availability of this other wood. I think it's more beautiful. So those are the reasons. But yeah, balsa is just not going to work. I think I would personally break it more times in the making of it than, actually finishing. It would be broken 5 or 6 times before it was actually even finished. So yeah, not bueno. So back to our patrons. The patrons are fantastic. Building things. That's what I was trying to go and say, John. John and I have had long conversations about, he would like to know a little bit about working with brass. Was it brass or copper, John? I think it was brass. How to build things out of brass. I've done a fair amount of that, and it's really fun. And when you start understanding some things that you haven't worked with before, and you haven't maybe had the opportunity to, use this tool or that tool, or you've got some trepidation about going into something because you're like, well, I've never seen it done. I don't know how to do it, and I've never done it myself. Hit me up. I may have something for you. Angela's boyfriend. I'm telling you, I bet if we got on the line and we started talking, I could just walk him right through it. I don't know if he's into that. He may not be into it, but if he's a woodworker, man, we're on it. Because yeah, there are concepts that once you see them, you're like, oh, well, that's not that bad. It really isn't that bad. So John came back. Yeah, he was looking for brass. So we can work with brass, copper, steel, tin. And those are all things that are pretty readily available in hobby stores to enhance your mold, to enhance your diorama. And I think that's why I like using them so much. I do have the material or the machinery to work with these materials. But prior to getting that machinery, like the stuff I showed last week, I did it all by hand. It's easier with these other machines, but I did it all by hand. And all you need to work with brass is a file and a way to cut it. And depending on how thick it is, those are different tools. So yeah, if you're interested in that kind of thing, take a look at my Patreon. I'm also, lately, I have been posting up some screensavers. So they're the screensavers I actually use, but also pictures that I took of stuff in the shop, of models, of dioramas, of some scenery around here. So yeah, it's kind of fun. So thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. John, we have a meeting tonight. We got a group build tonight, so I'm really excited about that. Everybody else, thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. If you like and subscribe, this happens every Friday, whether you want it to or not. And I'd sure like to see you on the text. So have a great one. Have a wonderful weekend. And I got a new short in the morning. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.